Hey, what's going on, everybody? Scott from Get Off the Couch Designs, and I'm going to be here to take you through cleaning up this slab and getting it all nice and pretty, making a little table out of it. So first thing I'm doing here is just cleaning it up with some 80 grit sandpaper, just going over the whole thing, giving it a nice sanding. Alright, once I got things sanded down, I wanted to clean up these big chunks that were on here. So I took some chisels, a mallet, and just went to work. I didn't really have a set plan here other than just to clean up these cracks. I didn't know how deep they were or what we were working with, so I just kept going at it for a while. I do want to take note of my nice clamping technique I have here. My waist here, pushing it into the table. Yeah, no, it didn't really work that great, but it did the job. If I was going to do more hand tool work like this, I really need to get a better setup. But I cleared out as much as I could, cleaned up the inside of the crack a bit, and then we got prepped for some epoxy work. So to get over to the epoxy work, I kind of just put this part on hold here because I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do with this. So I figured I'd sand it all down, get it smooth so it wasn't rough, and then work on the crack. So here we are, sanding the crack. Then we go ahead and add a bunch of this tape. This is Tyvek home wrap tape. You can get it from Lowe's. You can get it a whole bunch of different places. But this is just basically home wrap tape. So I'm going to layer a whole bunch of it on here, and then we'll pour some epoxy. I really didn't want this thing to leak at all, so I taped it up pretty good. Then I went down to the basement and mixed up some epoxy. I got Total Boat 2-to-1 resin here with a slow hardener. It's really what I use for a lot of things. Then I got some white Mixol number 25 to mix in there because I think the white will pop really well against the dark walnut color. You really should use gloves when you're mixing this stuff, so I did throw some gloves on. Being that the crack was on a slanted part of the slab, I was here trying to figure out a way to make it somewhat level so that when I pour the epoxy, it can fill up the most of the gap without having to take multiple passes. It was a bit tricky, and I ended up having to run out to the shop after it was poured and try and fix it, and, there was issues, but we figured it out. These syringes right here are awesome. I have a box of them I use for all kinds of things, but especially for little cracks like this, you can get the head of the syringe right in there and direct it where you want it to go. Makes it nice and easy. And these syringes, I just toss them after. There's no sense in trying to clean them up or anything like that. They're pretty cheap, but they work great. They do take a little bit of time though, so I get a little impatient and I end up just pouring it sometimes. It can be a little bit messy, but oh well, that's what happens, right? I also mixed up way too much epoxy, as you can see here, but it is what it is. Maybe calculate your epoxy before you just go ahead and start pumping away, and want to make sure that you have enough, but also don't want to underdo it, so it is what it is. But I poured a nice slow little bit here and just kind of was watching where it was flowing to see if I needed to prop it up any different ways. And as you can see, it's starting to pour out the back of the crack there. So here I kind of stopped, tried to reassess and figure out what I'm going to do. But let's pour some more in there to see how fast it actually pours out of that crack. I don't know what I was thinking, but figured I'd try it, why not? Here's where it comes in, the part where I was talking about leveling out for the crack. So since the crack is on the slant right there, you can see the epoxy is starting to pour out the front of the slant because I overfilled it. And if I left it like that, then I would have to come back and fill it again later, and I already had a lot of epoxy mixed up, so I didn't really want to do that. So I took some boards and some random stuff and just kind of shoved it under there and got it to the point where it was kind of semi-flat there. I did end up taking some hot glue and using it around the edge where it was leaking out the back so it would act as a barrier, and it worked out pretty well. Take a look for yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments. Yeah, I jumped back to the syringe, I know, I was back and forth. Then I just hit it with the heat gun real quick to see if I could get as many bubbles out of it as I could. Being 2-to-1, you get some bubbles, but I knew that if I got the surface ones out, everything would be good. And here we are with it all cured. Just flipping it over to remove the tape. Getting the tape off was a bit of a chore, but not too bad. I think if you use a heat gun, it might make it easier to take off the tape, but I don't know. It came off pretty easy as it was. I left some of it on there and then went and hit it with an 80 grit sander and just sanded off the rest of it. So it worked out pretty well. Once we had that all sanded down, we then went over to the other cracks, and I added some epoxy to them because I wanted to do a little experiment here. I filled some of them with epoxy, some of them with Rangate knot filler, and then some of them with Starbond adhesives. This right here is the Rangate knot filler. It's a really cool system. It's like kind of like a hot glue gun. You take your sticks in there, you squeeze it, fill your gap with it, scrape it away, and then you sand just like you would with epoxy, and you put your finish on. I didn't really get any footage of the Starbond application, but there is white Starbond on here as well. So I went through, sanded everything, blew it all off with a compressor, and then we're going to go ahead and add some Odie's oil. Here I'm using the Super Duper Everlasting oil. It's one of my favorites. It's real thin, goes on easy, and really brings out the grains in the wood, as you can see here. Look at that pop. Ooh-wee. So once that's all applied, then I go ahead and I set it up on these little painter's feet to dry. Once it's sat on there for about 24 hours, I'll come back with a white cloth and just buff it all off by hand. Man, does that look good. I love the white epoxy and how it pops in with the walnut. Real happy with that. So then I picked up these legs from Semi-Exact. Super awesome, super easy to order from, and they look great. So I've never used hairpin legs really, so I was kind of just messing around, and this slab is a weird shape, so I was kind of messing around trying to find the configuration that would work best. Once I did, I then went ahead and pre-drilled some holes. I tried it one time with the stand on there to pre-drill, and then another time I marked my holes and pre-drilled. Either one works fine. There is a sure advantage of using the pencil because then you won't mar up your base at all. But, you know, 6 in one, half dozen the other. Here, you can see the table in our house looking nice and good. Really love the way that the white epoxy and filler all pops against the black walnut, and then the white legs really bring it all together. Full disclosure, I did end up taking this back out to the shop and moving the legs into a different spot because it was a little top heavy if you leaned on or front heavy if you leaned on the front edge of it. So it is all fixed, and now it's sitting next to that chair in my wife's little reading nook. I really hope you enjoyed this little narration and video, and if you did, please like and subscribe the video.